Onto the budget tab. This tab has quite a bit in it. And let's start with just at the very top, we have a couple things. So we have more helper information. I won't read it all, but if you want to know about each of the columns, take a look at the top here, read the description. And then we also have about this worksheet. So again, this will be summarizing what I'm talking about with respect to the worksheet. Obviously, by talking about it, I can give you a little more detail. We have a quick navigation section because this is a pretty lengthy section. You know, if you need to go to a specific category, you can just choose it here. A link will appear and you click, and now you're at the finished materials section. So what this budget tab is doing is it is tracking every possible expense related to the project. Anything with this yellow shading is editable, and you can rename it as you wish. I do not recommend renaming during the project because once you start entering transactions, the transactions value must equal one of these values. So do not change these during the project. We have a couple things here that I just want to cover. This construction draw XREF, which is short for cross-reference. This is how the spreadsheet knows how to build the draw schedule down at the bottom. So when putting together your budget, you're in the initial budget column, all of the values that you enter here will start to be pulled into the draw schedule tab. And the way that is done is by having a unique and consistent identifier here versus the draw schedule. And so you'll see on the draw schedule, we have A1. Everything with an A1 will be brought into here and summarized. So let's go back to our budget. So just to show you as an example, now if I make it 2,500, now we will see the draw schedule here says 7,500. I don't want to go through each and every one of these line items. I think that's overkill, but each category is put together to have some sort of cohesive structure to it. Let's talk about the internal cost codes. These are cost codes that this is not a required field that you need to enter. They have been pre-populated with values that could make sense. If you're working with a bookkeeper and the bookkeeper tells you, I need to enter all of these individual line items, you know, attorney's fees, concessions, government fees, they're typically in their software going to put a unique code to it, a numerical value. This might make it easier for them to track. A cost code is also a good way for you to keep track and label receipts and invoices in a faster method rather than writing out the full name. So really it's just a number goes with a name. That's the whole purpose here. Further to the right, we will see that we have a couple extra columns here. So the first one is, does final one and final two match? Final one and final two, as we mentioned earlier in the summary tab, has to do with whether everything that we've recorded in the transactions tab matches what we thought would happen in our anticipated final budget. So what do we think our final numbers are going to be? Did we record all of those in here? If they do not match, there could be a number of reasons why they do not match. And we will also see this column start to populate with yeses and nos, potentially also 3 arrows pointing up. And the description and the information about that, it can be found in this About This Column section, about how to fix those. Something else that's helpful is dollars per sellable square foot or dollars per unit. This is also a way to just kind of track your dollars per square foot during the project, and you can do it on a sellable or a gross square footage basis. If you want to enter any information about additional notes or anything else that you want to just keep track of, you can do that over here in the Your Notes section. And then lastly, the whole reason for having all of these columns is, again, to track our variances. So if you expand this section, you will see that you can see all of the different variances, where they took place, and green would be a good variance and red would be a bad variance. So if we start to put in here that this one cost us $5,000 and this cost us $10,000, you'll start to see that when you're looking at your bids and estimates versus your initial, we did go over which would imply that we just didn't budget right from the start, and our contractor came in and said, this is what this line item is going to cost, and unless we can find another contractor that will do it for less, we have an overage here. So as you're filling out this spreadsheet, you're going to start with the initial budget, and any areas where there's still yellow shading, you are also going to kind of copy that data over. So at the start of the project, everything should be the same. You'll have all of these numbers be the same. As the project progresses, these numbers may update. And then as you get to the end, you'll have that here. And as we'll do a sample transaction, even though this is the budget tab. So if we have, what was the budget here? This was architect plans proposed. So we choose architect plans proposed. We put in 2,500, put in a date of 5/5/2020. Now we will see that has been drawn into our actual, because we've actually recorded the expense. We had it on a check or a credit card, and it's now entered in here. If you have a bookkeeper, then you will be finding that you'll make sure that the bookkeeper is entering the data properly, as well as if you're just entering it yourself, you'll make sure that you haven't typed in anything wrong, and you're keeping track of, reconciling your accounts. So there are a lot of items here. There are a couple sections where we have some overrides. The overrides would be opportunities to override what the spreadsheet is calculating, and this could be done for any number of reasons, but you don't have to use it. Just know that. Now we're going to go to the bottom here. After we've gone through and entered all of our expenses and costs, we are going to see this summary section, which looks very similar to what is on the summary tab. And this section, the only thing we need to do down here, if we choose to, is enter in what we feel will be our estimated tax liability. And the spreadsheet will take out what we think we need to pay in taxes to give us an after-tax income. And if we are partnering with anybody, how many partners we have on the deal. This assumes that you're splitting it evenly. If you have something that's obviously more complicated or tiered, this may not be as much value to you, but if you have 2 or 3 equal partners, then you can see that when you adjust it, it's going to show you your per share amount. Some additional metrics are displayed down here about your percentage of revenue. And lastly, we have our construction costs. These are the hard costs. How much on a dollar per foot basis, how much of our contingency budget did we either budget or use, and on a sellable square footage basis and a gross square footage basis, what did we spend? One last thing to consider is we do have, as I mentioned, some fields that are not editable, and I just want to draw special attention to the finished materials section. Everything that is listed here is not editable, and the reason for that is because this is now linked to the finish material tab, number 3 here. So when you enter a budget, let's just say we're going to spend $10,000 on kitchen appliances. What you will find in the finish material tab is that our budget has now shown, we now see the $10,000 budget here, and we can pick out our refrigerators and our microwaves and ranges and start to fill that in. So we will fill in our pre-tax amount. So if we're spending $2,000 on a refrigerator, this is assuming a sales tax of 6.25%. If your tax is different, fill that in. It's now going to show you how you're doing based on your budget, because remember, your budget is not exclusive of tax. It should be inclusive of tax. When you are finishing when you're finishing filling this out, you will see under and over, and I realize that we are going back and forth here. Let's talk about the budget tab. So as you fill this out, what's happening is these dollar amounts that are being aggregated are being fed back into what we think the anticipated final will be. And again, it is showing up in this anticipated final because we want the anticipated amount to be shown here so we can see our real-time performance, our real-time pre-tax income at all times, track it against what we thought we were going to get throughout the project. And then we want to make sure that we've recorded it and reconciled that. So Once we get that receipt entered in the transactions tab, it repopulates here. And now we know we are, and again, going back to the left here, this now says no. So actually, let's just finish this out here. Let's just keep filling this in. So we will go to appliances, kitchen. We will say 2,500, or sorry, 2,125, I think was the amount. We'll put 55 as the date. And when we go back here, we can see that the two match and a yes is good. If we happen to spend more or entered a wrong number here, this might be higher, then we'll see a different, notation here. So if we fat fingered it and said 21,250 or something crazy, then you'll see these little up arrows, and that's kind of a visual cue that something may not be right. So obviously we can tell we have a typo here. But you always want to be paying attention to this section as well while things are starting to get populated and filled out. So this is how the finished materials kind of, you enter data here and it will feed into the finished material tab. And as you complete that tab, it feeds back into this tab. So everything is fully integrated. And that is everything about the budget tab. So if there are any other questions, feel free to reach out.